When the children saw the giant rushing towards them, they were terrified and ran away as they'd always done. "Don't run away, my little ones," he cried out. "The garden belongs to you now." But when they heard this, they didn't believe him and just kept on running. Over by the tree, the weeping child in the white tunic hadn't noticed the commotion, so, still wearing his nightshirt and slippers, the giant strode over to him. The giant picked up the little boy with his enormous hand and gently put him down on a branch of the tree. And he could see the little boy was trembling with fear, so he whispered, "Don't be frightened, my little friend." Suddenly, the tree was full of delicate blossom, and birds started singing in its branches. The giant was touched. The contact with the child, a tiny figure in a little white tunic, made him feel just like a rough old tree caressed by the youthfulness of spring. Suddenly he made a decision. The children who had run away were standing near the opening in the wall. They had been watching the giant with pounding hearts, but when they saw the giant coming towards them looking friendly, they were no longer afraid. When he saw how surprised they were, the giant assured them that he was quite serious. He would never drive them out of the garden again. And to prove he wouldn't change his mind, he ran back to the castle to get a pickaxe, and in the twinkling of an eye, he knocked down the surrounding wall. Then he offered sweets to all the children and stayed to play with them. The huge giant had never felt so happy. He was free of the terrible loneliness he'd been feeling. He regretted the many selfish years and felt happy they were over, but was delighted to see his garden crowded with children and spent whole days just watching them playing. People passing near to the castle were amazed. The selfish giant had become generous. Soon word got around, and more children arrived who wanted to play in the giant's garden, as well as many curious people who just came to see this good giant. The giant sat watching the children playing happily together. But there was only one thing upsetting the good giant. The little child in the white tunic had never been seen in the garden again. So he went up to the children and said, "Where is my little friend in the white tunic? You must remember him. I helped him up into the tree in the garden." However, none of them could give him an answer. They hadn't seen the child in the tunic for a long time, and he hadn't been back to play with them. Every day after school was over, the children came to play in the castle garden. The giant was always there to meet them and share a joke with them. But he continued to ask after the little child in the white tunic. "Tell him to come back. I'm waiting for him." That little boy had been his favorite, and he was missing him. The giant waited hopefully for him, but he waited in vain. Time passed. The hours, days, seasons, and years went by. The children grew up, and the giant grew old. Now he was almost always sitting in his chair watching the games in the garden. Every day, every hour, he felt a little more tired. But he never gave up hope of seeing the little one in the little white tunic, who still occupied his thoughts. One winter's morning, the giant looked out of his window as usual. Naturally, the garden was all frozen, but incredibly, one tree was bursting with flowers, just as if it was spring. Taking a closer look, he could see, sitting on a branch of the tree, the little child in the white tunic. Full of joy, the giant rushed out as fast as his tired old bones would let him, made his way across the snow-covered lawn and finally reached the tree covered in flowers. Sitting on the branch, the child smiled at the giant and said, "You let me play once in your garden. Today, you shall come to my garden, which is paradise." Looking at the child, the giant finally understood. The friend he had missed so much was none other than the little Jesus. And when the children came to play in the garden that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree, covered in the most beautiful blossom.